Oh, hello. This is my video response to the Angry Video Game Nerds review of Castlevania II, Simon's Quest, for the even older school NES. If you've seen that video, you know that while I was a big fan of his videos and still am, the first time I saw that video, I was pissed. But then I got over it and watched the rest of the video, despite the fact that I really loved it as a kid and I still had to agree with a lot of his points about the game. While I really wanted to recommend the game to my viewers, I couldn't do so in good conscience unless they wanted to follow a guide verbatim. So by now you gotta be wondering, what am I doing making a video about a video response I made over 7 years ago, about a video made over 10 years ago, about a game made over a quarter of a century ago? That's a good question. Anyway, earlier this year at MagFest 2014, my buddy Jonathan came up at the end of the Retro TV panel and gave us all games for Christmas presents. The game he presented me with was this, Castlevania II, Simon's Quest Redaction, for the old school NES?
Well, obviously this is a hack of the original, and it was released by the now defunct Time Walk Games. While I was super thankful for the gift, I honestly had no idea what he had given me, so he explained that this game is basically the same as Castlevania II, but it attempts to fix the things that broke the original. Right then, I knew I had to do a follow-up to my first video. Castlevania II Simon's Quest Redaction was created by the almighty Guru. After watching unflattering reviews like AVGN's first review, he decided to play the game for the first time, and he too found it unplayable due to the lack of useful instructions found in the game. He took it upon himself to rewrite the dialogue in order to make the game playable by the average gamer. But that's not all. While he was tinkering with the game, he made some other changes to improve it. Was it enough to take this game out of the shadows of the Hell House and induce magic and happiness for those who walk on this land? Well, let's take another walk on the land of Transylvania to be sure. Yeah, this game is awesome. Probably. Well, right off the bat, you can tell that a lot of thought went into this revision because even the original goofy storyline complete with the Hell House has been removed in favor of something resembling an actual story that makes sense. Gather Dracula's remains and destroy them permanently? Got it. Let's redo this. Now, I know I'm not supposed to whip this guy, but it's just fun. Oh wait, that's right, I gotta read. Man, in addition to my complaints from the last video, the truth is that I was only 7 years old and I was learning to read at the time, so this game with cryptic messages made me feel like a dunce. Are you clever enough to unveil the darkest secrets? Without Nintendo Power? Definitely not. In regards to the townspeople lying, Nintendo Power says, the local folk may help you with clues, but all quake in fear of the wrath of Dracula, so beware of false advice. And don't believe everything you hear because a few pranksters lurk about. Which is it? Are they afraid of Dracula or are they pranksters? Whichever the case, playing the original was like someone putting your car keys in the box with a combination lock and then hiding it in a field. Even if you know where you're supposed to go, you'd have no idea what they were thinking when they picked the combination. It's not even a challenge really, it's just unfair and it's poor game design. Okay, since this revision claims to make the game playable by the average gamer, I played this game without any kind of guide, Nintendo Power, GameFAQs, or otherwise, and I honestly haven't played through this game since I did my first video over 7 years ago, so naturally I'm a little rusty. But I know what you're thinking. Doesn't my knowledge of the game bias me? Well, yes it does, but I played through the game honestly and would not allow myself to access any of the game's secrets until I found the corresponding clue that told me what to do. Hey wait, did this guy actually tell me something useful? Unbelievable! So maybe there is hope of playing this game all the way through without help from a guide. And did the text move that fast in the original? No, this is like 4 times faster. Well, that's just convenient. You never realized how cumbersome it was until you see this version, and especially if you compare them side by side. Damn! Anyway, when you get out of town, nothing has changed. Whipping skeletons and fishmen like in the first one is still fun. So back to the Angry Video Game Nerd's first complaint about the game, the day-night mechanic. How did Redaction fix this problem? Well, a dialogue box still pops up and it still says that infamous line, "What a horrible night to have a curse." And you can't skip it, but the transition was the problem. Let's compare. Man, 4 seconds versus 10 seconds? That's a pretty big difference. Now, this is where I decided to say that Castlevania II has influenced some really great modern games like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, citation needed. But that was really just my own observation, though I still think it makes sense. In truth though, the biggest contribution Castlevania II has made to games is of course, the Castlevania series itself. Castlevania II's Metroid-esque non-linear gameplay and puzzle elements can be seen throughout many Castlevania games, starting with Castlevania Symphony of the Night through recent Castlevania games. Anyway, back to Castlevania II. Yeah, you still die when you fall into water, but based on when this game was made, I'm not even gonna call foul, and I honestly don't think that this needed fixing. Fact of the matter is, this was standard fare for games of the time. You fall into water, you die, because it's an obstacle. And hey, I guess not everyone can swim, right? Next complaint, it takes too many hearts to buy items, and getting a game over means you lose them all. While this remains true in Redaction, as the almighty Guru pointed out on his website, all of the false hints have been removed. This game is hard enough to figure out on its own, and the items are too costly to waste. I'll say, if you're on a wild goose chase, you'll inevitably end up using laurels to cross swamps, and those things cost the same as garlic. So while you still have to grind to get more hearts and level up, you can do so with a sense of purpose. I maintain that while it sucks to lose your hearts when you get a game over, a penalty, and usually a very strict penalty, was mandatory for games of the time, and it didn't hold your hand like a lot of games do nowadays. Next, the Flame Whip rocks. Done. So the point is still to collect Dracula's 5 body parts, and yes, 2 of them are still nail and ring, but at least the game tells you that the nail is more than just a nail, and is capable of breaking blocks instead of saying that it could solve the mystery or whatever. Since the dialogue in this game is actually helpful, you'll probably have the white crystal equipped by this point, since you know that it can reveal hidden blocks, and this part of the mansion is a breeze now. Unfortunately, those pesky pitfalls persist to push your patience, even in this version, but honestly, most of the changes are cosmetic and didn't mess with the gameplay too much. This was probably a good choice considering that the point was to make the game playable, not change it entirely. In fact, the game is left intact and the only changes that have been made are truly just improvements, leaving you to enjoy the game as it should have been enjoyed back in 1988. When you get to the end of the mansion, once again, there's no boss. There are still only 2 bosses in the game besides Dracula, and while you can walk right past the Grim Reaper without ever fighting him, he's been given twice as many hit points as he had in the original game, so at least he's somewhat of a challenge. While the easy bosses weren't originally the touch of death for this game, making death more difficult was a nice touch. So at the end of the mansion, there's that glowing orb that you have to throw an oak stake at, and that gave me no trouble at all thanks to the advice of strangers. It's also worth noting by this point I haven't used any knowledge obtained from anywhere but within the game. Sorry Nintendo Power, it looks like I don't need you to get through this game anymore. Rest in peace. I'll admit that it was tempting to go straight to the lake with the blue crystal and kneel to reveal the path, but I stuck to my scruples. It took a lot of searching, but the clue is there and it makes sense. The magic tornado is still there in all of its 8-bit glory, but instead of cryptic rubbish, the game actually tells you exactly what to do now. Now all of the townspeople have useful things to tell you, such as the name of the town you're in, things you need to be looking for, and most importantly, what the hell house you're supposed to do. So now that some more research has been done by other websites, I can confirm that the reason the text was so poor in the original is not only because deception was built into the game on purpose, but also because of a poor translation from the original Japanese version. Even with the impossible challenge, I still loved this game as a kid. I suppose I must have liked the abuse. Oh yeah, game, give it to me. I'll never figure it out. But this game fixes all of that, luckily. Yeah, you still have to enter a 16-digit code, but that's not so bad, and considering you'll probably be playing a ROM of this game, it's actually a non-issue since you can just save your state and make it even easier on yourself. No more problems with my bad handwriting. And my handwriting is bad. The enemyless castle at the end is just as enemyless as ever, and that never really bothered me too much as a kid because the build-up to Dracula was all the more intense to me. Time to burn Dracula's 5 body parts and see that stupid-looking Nazi pilot skeleton Grim Reaper whatever style Dracula again. Seriously though, when you're made of a rib, an eyeball, a heart, a nail, and a ring, how good could he look? Well, let's find out. Yeah, that's not very pretty. Here we go. Oh crap! Now that looks like Dracula. This is the same picture from the original password screen, and since the original Dracula looked nothing like Dracula, this is definitely an improvement. Nice touch. The difficulty of Dracula is the same, and if you're cheap, dispatching Dracula is no sweat. Now for the depressing, nonsensical endings, I suppose, right? Wrong. Same as before, there's 3 possible endings and the rules are the same. You get the worst ending if you take a long time and or use too many continues. Black and white, not very satisfying, but the text makes more sense. You get the best ending if you beat it quickly and use next to no continues, and that one really feels like the best ending. The normal ending that seriously damaged me as a kid finally feels like the normal ending because it doesn't read like the worst of the endings as it did in the original. The endings are a lot more satisfying for me now, honestly, and put a bow on this nicely repackaged game. Thanks, Jonathan! It was also re-released on the Wii U in early 2014, so you can easily get the original now if you want to, but honestly, unless you want to compare the two, this is the version you want to play. Look at how awesome this packaging is. This would be the part where I would tell you how you can get your own copy, but unfortunately nowadays you can't buy a physical copy. This physical copy of the game was released by Time Walk Games, who unfortunately had to close their doors earlier this year, so the only way you'll get your hands on a physical copy nowadays is by having someone make it for you or by buying a copy off of somebody. However, you can play the game for free. The link is in the description, so have a peep because you have nothing to lose. But then again, there's no time. AVGN actually mentioned this game in a review he did earlier this year, and even the nerd had to admit that Redaction actually made the game playable. However, some people say that it's more than just the cryptic messages that sucked about this game, and Redaction couldn't fix it. But I feel like these changes fixed the things that broke the game and originally kept it from being a classic. Albeit a bit of a deep cut when compared to the wide and lasting appeal of games like Super Mario Bros. 3 and DuckTales, of course, but a classic nonetheless.
So there you have it, Castlevania II Redaction. Some people think it fixed the original, some people think it was too little too late, but if you're like me, you're about a third of a century old and you live in your own basement.
Dinner time, come on up!
Oh, my mom still comes over and cooks for me though. I'll be right up! My knees hurt. Forget it, I'll walk.